So you used to be in a band. You had backup, shared energy, and others just to carry some of the load. But now you're flying solo or trying to get started out on your own, and it just feels vulnerable. Maybe not as fun or just harder than expected. And that's a problem. But here's the truth. You can absolutely thrive as a solo act, even if you're not a shredder or a frontman or somebody who loves self-promotion. My name is Finbar and I gig 7 nights a week in the pubs and bars of Edinburgh, just playing cover songs as a solo musician. And this was me a few years ago. Full band, packed venue, energy flying around the stage, and I absolutely loved it. Being in a band is special. You've got that camaraderie, the shared nerves, the in-jokes. There's this kind of momentum you get when you're not alone on the stage. But after thousands of solo gigs, I've learned something. While band gigs are fun, solo gigs are freeing. You're faster to set up, you're easier to book, and you keep every penny, as well as just building something that's entirely your own. And I'm not just speaking from experience on this. I've helped dozens of musicians get out there doing solo gigs, and several of the musicians I've worked with are making this exact transition from playing in bands to exploring the solo gigging world. Like Danny, for example, who was originally a drummer, or Roland, who played in bands for years, or John, who gigged in a band in his youth and is now getting back out there 20 years later as a solo musician. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through the 5 biggest shifts that musicians face when going from band gigs to solo gigs. Then I'll give you 3 simple wins you can focus on to build momentum, whether you've done a few solo gigs or you're just thinking about getting started. So let's get into it. Now, one of the guys in my free community, he sent me this message which really captures what a lot of musicians in this transition phase are feeling. And he wrote, "I don't know if you've ever been in a working band, but there are pluses and minuses. I miss the pluses, being in a gang, sharing the workload, having a specialist at every position. I find the pluses of solo work to be few." And he mentions one here when he says, "I don't have to rely on or be held back by anyone else," which is definitely true. But you can see that there's a lot of negative thoughts here surrounding that transition. And he later added, "A band is a safe space for introverted musicians like me. If I didn't need the work, there'd be no way you could talk me into doing solo performances, and here I am." Now that's powerful stuff. And if you've ever felt like that or can relate to what he's saying, keep watching. You're not alone. Now, what I've actually observed within my free community is that many musicians are going solo these days or trying to transition from playing in bands to playing on their own. And for some of them, it's by choice. Some it's necessity, and some just because life changes and bands fall away. And on paper, it can make a lot of sense. You've got fewer logistics, you've got more freedom, but emotionally, it is a big shift. You go from feeling part of a team to suddenly standing alone in the spotlight, and that can be quite intimidating. Now, if any of this resonates with you and you actually want help getting your footing as a solo act, I've put together a free solo gig confidence checklist, and that includes a script for crowd interaction that feels natural, an email template that you can use to send to venues to get booked, 30 crowd-pleasing songs that are easy to play and always land well at all types of venues. If you want access to it for free, the link is below this video. Now keep watching and I'll walk you through what to focus on next. Now this brings me to the next part of this video, which is very important, and it is the big 5 shifts of solo gigging, especially if you're coming from playing in a band environment. Now, the first shift is something that I think most people struggle the most with, and that is you lose the gang, right? In a band, there's shared energy on stage. Someone cracks a joke, or somebody else handles a technical issue, or you just look around and you know that you're part of a unit. But when you go solo, it can feel very quiet. There's nobody to cover your nerves, there's nobody to chat to between sound check and the start of the gig. And that loneliness can catch you off guard and make you feel quite vulnerable, especially at the beginning. But here's the upside. When the night goes well, it's yours. You held the room, you created the moment, and there's something powerful in that. And my top tip on this is don't just perform to an audience. Talk to them, interact with them, say hello, share a quick story, or ask a light question. You know, connection actually becomes your superpower and almost like your new bandmate. The second big shift of solo gigging is no more specialists, but full creative control instead. In a band, the roles are split. You know, you've got the drummer who sets the pace, you've got the guitarist who takes the lead, and you've got the singer who brings the charm and the energy. But you pretty much stay in your lane. But gigging solo, you're every lane, and that can feel intimidating at first, especially if you don't consider yourself a technical player or a natural frontman. But here's the upside. Now you control the shape of every song you play. You can pause, stretch, slow down, build tension without needing a group vote. Another musician in my community, Chris, he said, I can slow a song or speed it up without the other band members looking like you stepped in it. Also, I might change the tempo at certain points of the song to give it more feeling. So again, a top tip on this, embrace that flexibility. Let a verse breathe, or let a chorus carry, or repeat a verse and a chorus if you feel like people are still into the song. You don't need to get permission from anyone to do this. You're not locked into a specific tempo, you're shaping the mood live, and you can really pivot depending on how the audience is reacting. Now, one very important point on this, I think many people who are used to being in a band, surrounded by that full sound, playing songs with guitar solos, sick bass runs, drum solos, they have this mindset when they're transitioning to solo gigging that playing solo, you need to replicate that full band sound all on your own with loopers, drum machines, huge pedal boards, backing tracks, etc. But honestly, this could not be further from the truth. I have gigged solo full-time for 6 years, and most of my gigs are just me and my guitar. Sometimes I'll use a stomp pedal, but that's it. I don't play solos or riffs, I don't use fancy pedals. Playing solo is much simpler. In a way, there's almost less pressure on you to make songs sound exactly like the originals. All you really need is a strong set list that you're confident with, that's full of primarily recognizable songs. Now, the third shift of solo gigging is a big one, and it can be overwhelming. And that is, you do it all. When you're in a band, the responsibilities are spread out. Usually one person handles the gear, maybe another checks with the venue, somebody else confirms the set list. But when you're solo, it's all on you. The setup, the sound check, the playing, the promotion, the payments, and that can feel like a lot to carry, especially at the beginning. But over time, and usually quicker than you think, it becomes smoother. You build a rhythm and you build a system. So one of my top tips for this is streamline your setup. Keep it simple with your setup. Don't overcomplicate it with extra pedals unless you really are comfortable using them. For me, simplicity is key, and it's what has allowed me to go full-time. No fuss, less gear, less stress, and more energy for what actually matters, which is your performance. Shift number 4 is another difficult one that people struggle to adapt to, and that is you have to sell yourself in a way. And I think it trips up a lot of musicians making this transition. You go from being one of the band to the face of the show, and it feels like when you're trying to get gigs, it's like you're saying, you know, book me, I'm worth it, or I'm amazing. And this can feel quite awkward or even a little bit cringy. But the reality is, and this is something I've alluded to in other videos, is that you're not selling yourself, you're actually offering a solution to a venue. You know, venues need solo musicians who are reliable, easy to work with, create an atmosphere with their song choice, and just keep punters happy. So when you're approaching a venue or an agency to try and get gigs, think of it like this. You're not auditioning, you're actually proposing a win-win. Reliable music that's easy to set up, enjoyable to listen to, and good for business. And that's not arrogance, that's just value. Shift number 5 is a difficult one for a lot of musicians, and that is the confidence crash. There can and will be that moment at the beginning, often after your first or second solo gig, where the doubt starts to creep in. You know, you start thinking, was I good enough? Did the crowd enjoy it? Will I even get asked back? And this is normal. You know, every solo musician has felt this at one point in time, including myself. But it's not a sign that you're not ready. It's just part of the process. So my top tip for transitioning out of this mindset is just keep showing up. Look for what went well, focus on the positives, not just on what went wrong. Confidence never arrives fully formed. It builds one gig at a time. Now finally, this brings me to part 4 of this video, which is 3 simple quick wins that you can use to build momentum. Tip number 1 is build a comfort first set list. Just start with 10 to 20 songs that feel natural and familiar. These should be songs that you can play confidently without needing to stare at a chord sheet or second guess the lyrics. Forget about showing off your skills, just focus on the flow, the comfort, and the emotional connection. When you feel relaxed playing songs, your audience will feel that too. Top tip for this one, choose songs that have simple chords, memorable choruses, and steady rhythms. Songs like Stand By Me, Benny King, or Take It Easy by the Eagles. These are songs that are popular for a reason. They always land. Tip number 2 is practice talking between songs. Now, I don't do a huge amount of this, and you don't need to either, but it's good to have a few lines up your sleeve just to break the silence sometimes. Crowd interaction can be one of the easiest ways to stand out as a solo performer, but it does take a little bit of practice if you've never done it before. And you don't need a comedy routine. You just need 1 or 2 lines between songs, and not even between every song. Just something that makes people feel like they're not just watching a musician, they're also connecting with a human being. Start by writing out 2 or 3 lines that you're comfortable saying. You know, for example, this one's for my old bandmates, or this one always gets a few heads going, or sing along to this one if you know it. Over time, it just becomes second nature. And tip number 3 to get some momentum going, which is probably the most important one, that is book a low stakes gig. This is where things really shift from theory to action. And don't wait forever until you're ready, because oftentimes that will never actually come. We're never fully ready to get out there gigging. You just have to chuck yourself in the deep end and learn how to swim. So what to do instead is to book a small gig where the stakes are low, but the payoff is high. Cafes, care homes, breweries, charity nights, open mics, or even busking. Anywhere that you can just play for 20 to 30 minutes and get some experience under your belt. And my top tip on this one is treat these early gigs as your rehearsal room in public. Keep the set list short and the gear simple, and just focus on collecting small wins, not perfection. So I hope you found this video helpful. In summary, solo gigging, it's not always easy, but it's real and it's yours. And you don't have to compromise or wait on anybody or fit into somebody else's vision. You're building something that's truly your own. So let me know in the comments if you relate to what I've talked about today. And don't forget, if you want to download my solo gig confidence checklist, grab it below this video for free. And I'll see you in the next one.